Hey, welcome back to the Road to Retirement with our co-host Tony Shore. My name's Chris Anselmo from Brookside Tax and Financial Group. So what's going on, Tony?
Well, I've been a busy guy. I've been getting my dad finally convinced him to move off the farm where he'd been
Oh,
by
wow.
himself, and because an apartment opened up in the
Okay.
assisted living wing where my mom has been.
So are
up
you
in
now on the
Fulda.
farm?
So I'm not on the farm.
Soon.
We're just maybe we're renting it out, but my dad is in an assisted living apartment and he's really happy. He
Oh,
loves it
good,
there.
good.
So, and he's
Yeah.
close
Plus,
to
you
my
get a lot.
mom.
You get you get camaraderie with other people too. Yeah.
Yeah, and he's close to my mom. So I mean, a hallway away. There's a hallway that
Oh, okay.
connects the two wings. She's in the full-time care nursing
Yeah,
home wing.
yeah.
But yeah, so I'm doing good. That's a really big relief off my mind because he was falling and he was, not taking his meds, and now they come in and yeah, they give him his meds each day, but he still has a license. He can still drive a little bit, and he has an apartment there. So that's nice.
Wow. How old is he
Yeah.
now?
He's 80.
Okay, well, that's not too bad. Yeah.
No, but he got diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Yeah.
It's crazy that both my parents have it. That's rare that, you have both your mom and dad get the same.
Maybe it's
Yeah.
something on that farm.
Well, a farm, I'll tell you, for a while,
No chemicals there, right?
yeah, they think that might be, like
Right.
Roundup and the sprays that they used to use.
Yeah.
Might be a cause of Parkinson's. So, yeah.
All right. So today I thought we haven't talked about this in a while. I just put on the bottom there for our listeners, beware of internet legal forms. So I'm just going to go through some horror stories that we've had over the years when people try to do it yourself. And not that there's anything wrong with doing it yourself, but it's often the documents you may pull off the internet are not as complete as you need them. Right. So they might look good on the face of it. Like, I read everything. It sounds okay, but they're missing a bunch of stuff. So, like we talked in other shows about power of attorneys and having one that we call, durable power of attorney, but you need it. That's a substantial one. It has clauses in it for taxes, has clauses in it for handling nursing homes and being able to move assets around in case you're trying to qualify for nursing. I mean, usually a 2 or 3 page legal form is not going to have everything you may need. And, unfortunately, it's not the time to cheap out because oftentimes what happens is you get to that point and, like, say it was for your mom, she's not competent to sign a legal document anymore. Right. So if you found out that the form's not good enough, but now she's not competent to sign the form, you got problems. Right. So,
Right.
So I'm going to go over a couple examples that we've had over the past several years, and this
Yeah.
isn't all of them, but just a couple of them that came at the top of the mind.
Sure, because a lot more people now are like, why spend the money on a lawyer when I can just, for a lower fee, for cheap, I can just download a document from, and there's a few popular sites now to download legal forms. Yeah, but they're
not all of them are bad, but just
right.
got to be careful.
But sometimes they're not. Most of the time, they're not inclusive enough, as you've mentioned before.
So one of the examples we had, kind of similar to your mom and dad, but we had two sisters owned a house together. One of them became ill and eventually would end up in a nursing home. So they owned this house together, and let's call her Sue and Betty, whatever. Okay. So Betty has to go into the nursing home. So she's not competent anymore. But before she went in, Sue grabbed a power of attorney off the internet and had Betty sign it. And it was that's something that was smart to do. So then now that Sue could sign Betty's name here and there. So Betty's on governmental support. So the government's paying for her nursing home care. And Sue says, I'd really like to sell the house because it's too big for me alone. And, I don't need this big of a house anymore.
Right.
So I said, well, let me look at your power of attorney. So she grabs the power of attorney, and it's like, 2 or 3 pages long. Like ours is 22 pages long, right?
Right. Right.
So I read the power of attorney, and I said, Sue, I hate to tell you this, but there's nowhere in there that says you have the right to sell the real estate. They had a few things about banking and this and that and the other thing, but nowhere in there that had any powers regarding real estate. So she says, well, what does that mean? I said, well, any title company or attorney is not going to accept that you have Betty's authority to sign her name on the deed. Right? She goes, oh boy, so what are we going to do? I said, well, unfortunately, if you do this, you're going to have to get a guardianship appointed to get court approval that you can sign Betty's name. Now, unfortunately, Sue, the court is going to require that. Let's say the house is worth $300,000. Sue, you don't get to keep the whole $300,000. The court's going to say, well, 150 of that belongs to Betty. Right? So they're going to have to set up an account for Betty. Now, if Betty gets $150,000 in her name, she's going to lose all her governmental support for the nursing home.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Well, I don't want to do that because then then all that money is going to go to the nursing home and yada, yada, yada. Right. So, so she says, well, what should we do? I said, well, I hate to tell you this, but you may have to wait till Betty dies. Right. So lo and behold, about a year later, Betty dies. Now gets even worse. So whoever did the deed, we've talked about deeds on other shows, we talked about how you can hold a deed as joint with survivorship rights. You could hold it tenants in common. So a couple ways, people hold deeds. So Tony, if you and I bought a piece of property, we could hold it as something called tenants in common. So if I pass away, I can say who gets my half. You pass away, you say who gets your half. Okay. The other way is joint ownership, where with survivorship. So if I die, you get my half. You die, I get your half. Right. So lo and behold, Betty dies, and whoever did the deed, again off the internet, didn't put joint survivorship. So Betty's share is going to go to whoever would inherit from Betty, which happens to be all 3 of her siblings. So not only does Sue's going to get part of it, but her other 2 brothers are going to get part of it. And Sue's beside herself. She said, look, I bought this house.
Yeah.
Why are my brothers getting, whatever percentage that is of the house? I said, well, I didn't do the deed for you. So you got to be really careful on stuff with deeds like this. So I don't even remember the resolution of the case. Maybe the 2 brothers would sign off on it and give it all back to Sue, but it's just not. It could have been avoided if he would have not tried to, I'll call it cheap out.
But not in a lot of situations, they wouldn't. They'd be like, that's mine.
Oh, yeah. And we've had a case, another case with. I'll give you a couple of cases with deeds. So a lot of times people try and grab a deed off the internet and do it. So we had a case where wife, second marriage, husband dies, right? So the property, half the property is going to go to the wife, and half the property is going to go to his 2 sons. Sounds okay? So the wife says, well, I'd really like the property. I'd like to buy out the 2 sons. So they sign a quitclaim deed to the wife, and the wife gives them $100,000 each, right? Lo and behold, nobody did a title search and finds out that there's a lien on the property. So now the wife says, well, I want my money back from the 2 boys. And because it's something called a quitclaim deed, and we'll go into that. So the difference is there's basically 3 types of deeds. There's a warranty deed that says, look, Tony, I'm going to give you a warranty deed. I'm warranting that this title's good. And if there's something wrong with the title, I'm going to have to pay for it because I'm warranting your title from the beginning of time until the time I give it to you.
Right.
Second one is a limited warranty deed, which says, look, I'm warranting title, but only as long as I had the property. I don't know what happened before I got it. So, but so if you want to do a title search and figure that. But I'm only going to limit my warranty to you. The third one is, and you may have heard of this, it's all over the internet, called quitclaim deed, which says I'm not warranting anything. I'm not even telling you I own it. Like I could give you a quitclaim deed right now to the Empire State Building. So it basically says whatever interest I may have, I'm giving you, but I'm not warranting that I own it at all. Right?
Wow.
So with a quitclaim deed, you can't come back and sue me because I said, look, I'm giving you whatever I have and I don't know what I have. And, so sometimes it's a quickie deed, like just to try and clean things up. But in this situation, unfortunately for the wife, she can't go sue the two sons to get her money back because it was a quitclaim deed. And in the quitclaim deed, the sons are saying, look, I don't know what I have. I'm giving you whatever I have and you can't come back and sue me. So, just silly things like that where people chose the wrong deed off the internet. And
they tried to do it. The bottom line is it isn't even the internet part of it. It's that they tried to do it on their own. They thought, well, I can get these from the internet. Why do I need an estate planning attorney to help me figure this out? And that's why it's worth paying a professional. Yeah. She could have paid $1,000, $2,000, whatever it would have cost. But now you're out a couple $100,000.
Yeah,
I mean, the cost, the mistakes are costly when it comes to these things.
Fortunately or unfortunately for her, she used an attorney. So she ended up suing the attorney.
Oh, she did use an attorney.
Yeah. So I'm just saying,
but it wasn't you.
Yeah. No. So, you could, and he just didn't do the title search. So, if he did the title search and there was no lien out there, the quitclaim deed would have been good, right? So there's things like that go on. Another one we had not too long ago was lady was single. So Tony, you buy a piece of property before you're married.
Yeah.
So she bought the property before she was married. Once she was married, she put her husband's name on the deed. Of course, did it on her own, like penciled it in and not even, got a, and had it recorded. Didn't put down whether there was joint survivorship or not joint survivorship, like we just talked about. So lo and behold, the husband dies, right? So 9 years later, she gets remarried and wants to put her new husband on the house. So I said, well, we got a problem. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, whoever did your old deed didn't put joint and survivorship language on it. So your husband's share that you put on would actually go to who would ever inherit from him. Right. So just like we talked about, if we own something, tenants in common, if you died, you get to give your half to whoever you want. I die, I get my half to whoever I want. So I said, well, where's the will? Do we have a will? Because if the will left you everything, then it's good. You're going to get the house. Right. So she said, well, it's been 9 years. I threw the will away. Oh, why would I keep the will? It's 9 years later. So it didn't turn out this way, but I knew the attorney who drafted the will. So I called him and I said, hey, Mike, you got a copy, like a signed copy of the will? It's not the original, but if we get a signed copy, we can use that. He says, no, I just have like my Word document. I don't have a signed copy anywhere. And it's been, they did this will like 20 years ago. So what happened here is the first husband's kids are going to inherit his half of the property. Right. And she goes, wow, wait a minute. I bought this house when I was single. How is this possible? I said, well, because, you guys use bad documents and stuff like that. So,
yeah.
So, wow. So she ended up, she's not doing anything. She says, hell, I'll just leave it the way it is. I'm not buying anybody out of my own house. So they'll deal when I die. So, it's just weird things that happen like that.
Yeah,
The other one,
that is crazy, and it's because they you download a form off the internet doesn't mean you know what you're doing or it's the right form.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah. I mean, for a few $100s, I mean, you're jeopardizing. Like a lot of the times, this is like all the money in your life, right? Your house,
yeah,
you're in savings and all, and
yeah,
you're
and it
trying.
really doesn't cost that much to
Yeah,
use an attorney to come
yeah,
into Brookside and have
yeah.
you guys
So
look
I
at
mean,
it,
like if
right?
we do a deed, we usually charge like $350, but that
Oh
also
my gosh,
includes that we're paying someone to go downtown. So we have to have paralegal go downtown to the county and record it, and we pay all the recording fees out of it. So probably it's only like a couple $100. So it, it's just not worth it sometimes to try and
right?
cheap out.
Yeah,
The other one we see a lot of, you can see on the internet a lot about doing your own wills.
yep,
Right.
that happens a lot. I
And
think a lot of people do that nowadays.
yeah, so one of the things in a will, there's ways of listing beneficiaries, and there's something we might have talked about, and you probably talked about it with other people on the show about something called per capita distribution versus per stirpes. So these are Latin terms. One's by the blood, one's by the head. So per capita is by the head, per stirpes is by the blood. So if Tony, if I said I'm leaving you my house to Tony Shore on a per stirpes basis, that would mean that if Tony Shore predeceased me, hopefully that wouldn't happen because you're a lot younger. It goes to his lineal descendants. So it would go to your children, say, right? So the other way would be per capita, which would be if Tony Shore dies, then it's going to go to the other heirs in my will, right? So we really need to, and then what if you don't say anything?
Yeah,
Each state has its own default rules about
right.
anti-lapse statutes. Some of them say it depends if that person was a grandchild of your grandfather,
Yeah.
and all kinds of stuff that. So you really don't. And we've had that happen where people they just, well, look, who knows the Latin terms but attorneys, right? So
Right.
what, I don't know why they can't say by the head and by the blood, but so per stirpes goes down the bloodline.
Yeah.
So and then
Yeah, my
oftentimes-
grandfather's will, when he died at 101, he had 4 children, but the oldest son had deceased.
right.
And so they did it it was by the blood. So my dad thought, well, then the shares get split between me and my sister and surviving brother.
Right.
Nope. His Jerry share went to his
Right.
2 children.
Right. So they got
And which one is
1/8
that? Per
Yeah.
stirpes.
that's per stirpes.
Yeah.
So per capita would have been what your dad was thinking, that it would
Yeah.
go to the other 3.
Well, he was hoping.
yeah, the other
He wanted the
remaining
share to
people-
be
yeah,
bigger.
sure.
He thought it would be bigger. I mean, he was fine with it. I
Yeah.
mean, he wants Jerry's kids taken care
Yeah.
of, so he was fine with it. He just didn't understand that's the way it worked, right?
And-
And,
and most-
I explained to him that. So yeah,
Yeah, and most people don't understand this stuff. So
Right.
now the other one we see with wills sometimes is they grab it off the internet and they do it, and it reads perfect, like everything's fine, but they don't have any witnesses, or they have it notarized. Like here in Ohio, which I think they should change, but it's just archaic. You have to have 2 witnesses on a will,
wow.
not a notary, 2 witnesses, and the witnesses are supposed to be in the room when you sign it, right? Like you can't just like have somebody witness it 3 days later, right? So
Right.
I think they should change it to 2 witnesses or a notary, but right now it's
Why
just 2
why
witnesses.
would a notary not
Yeah,
be
it's
sufficient?
really
because the notary is number one a witness and has to be
Yeah.
there when it's signed to
Right.
notarize it. So you've got a in-person witness plus they're an official notary.
Right, yeah,
they have the
because
stamp.
oddly enough, on other shows we talked about something called a living will
Mhm,
or a
yep,
healthcare power of attorney.
yep.
So here in Ohio, a healthcare power of attorney can be either 2 witnesses or a notary. So either one of those will do. Because sometimes you go out to someone's house and then there's no notary around, right? And
Right.
or you go out and you're the notary and there's not 2 witnesses. So I'm like, well, it's odd that our state said, look, I can kill them. Like I can terminate their life with 2 witnesses or a notary, but I can't give away their property. Like it's just see, I think it's
Yeah.
just archaic, and I think we should be changed. But here, in probably a lot of other states, you need to have 2 witnesses,
Yeah.
right? And so the will is invalid. So now what? So now we end up doing whatever the state says to do with the decedent's property, and it might not be what you want, right? Maybe you didn't want to give it all to this one person, or you end up intentionally disinheriting someone, or it's going to someone you didn't want because maybe you have an estranged child or brother or whoever, and you didn't want them to get a share. Now they're getting part of your property. So it's just not. We could go on and on with examples of this stuff, but this isn't the time to cheap out. I mean,
No.
you spend a lifetime gathering these assets, and the other ones we see a lot, it might not be internet related, but you've talked about this other guys on your shows where your will only governs assets that are stuck in a decedent's name that has nobody else's name on it. So anything that has a beneficiary designate, like most IRAs say, when I die, give it to my wife, because
most financial accounts,
right. So we signed something with the institution that say, when I die, give it to this person or these people. So they don't have to use the will for that. They just go directly to, I don't know, Charles Schwab. And say,
that's a legally binding document. But that takes precedent over the will. So even if you say the opposite in your will, like I want all the money to go here, if on the account, the beneficiary is going over here to someone that you've divorced 20 years ago, it's going to go to that person because that's what the beneficiary designation says. Right?
And you have to try to update these from time to time.
Yeah.
Because your will might be in conflict with those, or you haven't looked at those in 20 years. I mean, we had a situation not too long ago where a daughter came in. It wasn't a large account, but to her was a lot of money. I mean, it was like a $25,000 life insurance policy, which, when you're a young kid and you're 20 years old, that's a lot of money. Not that it's not, you know what I'm saying? So, so we went through the whole thing, and I talked to the insurance company. I'm like, well, when are you going to send her the check? She said, well, we sent the check to her mother and father got divorced years ago, and we sent the check to her father. I'm like, well, why would you send a check to her father? They were divorced. I said, the statute says, when you're divorced, it's as if you predeceased. So you just kind of skip over that person, and whoever should get it next. So the daughter should get it next. And they says, yeah, we understand that. And I said, well, what happened? She goes, well, that statute came out in 1992, and they got divorced in 1988. So the father, who's not even talking to the daughter, ended up with the $25,000, and the daughter's beside herself. But so things like that, you got to. That's why you got to check on those designations. Like Tony said, like most IRAs, pension plans, life insurance have beneficiaries on them. So despite what the will says, the will could say, leave my life insurance to Tony Shore, but at the company, it said, give it to my wife. My wife's getting it. Right.
Yeah.
So you really got to be careful with, because people think they could just clean everything up in a will. So for all you listeners, so the will only covers assets that are stuck in the decedent's name that nobody else is on. So if I have an account at
like a truck, like if you
I have a local bank account, I have a local bank account, and for whatever reason I opened it, my wife wasn't there that day, and there's money in it, and nobody else is on it. That's going to go through my will to get to whoever it's got to get to. But if my wife was on there as a joint owner or a beneficiary, or however you do it, then they don't need to use the will to get it to the beneficiary. So
right, and wills cover personal property, like the nice silver set that we own, or the truck, or sometimes a cabin. If you don't, hopefully you have your house and vehicles. Get
rid of the silver set. Nobody wants the silver sets anymore.
No,
and all those Hummels and the China sets, and those are as from an estate planning, those are kind of just a really a pain in the rear when we got to, like, what do we do with? Nobody wants them, and how do you even value them? Right?
Yeah, you can't even sell a lot of that stuff anymore.
Put it on eBay. We do have a client that runs a internet estate sale kind of,
Yeah.
and it's like eBay. People just bid on items, and so.
Yep.
Tony, I think we're kind of out of time.
Yeah, we are, but great topic. Really important for people to understand. You need to work with an estate planning attorney, and I know that you've been doing this a long time and have seen a lot of the missteps. Yeah. You've been doing this a long time, Chris.
So for our list, I can give them their phone number, 440-886-3550 if you want to get a hold of us, or brooksideTax.com. Yeah. So yeah, literally, maybe that'll be the next book, Tony. Estate planning horror stories.
Yeah, there you go. You got a lot of them, and they're really important. It's really good to know, so you can avoid these costly mistakes. Yeah. Well, Chris, great show today. Yeah, I mean, the road to retirement with Chris Anselmo. Great show.
All right, thanks, Tony. I'll see you next week.
Yep.
All right, take care.